Hello, everyone, and welcome to our session today with the Forest Carbon Webinar University. We are going to take just a minute. We'll be mindful of your time as we wait for everybody to get into the Zoom room. But while we do it, we really appreciate you typing in where you're from, landowner. It just helps give us some insight into who's on the Zoom and who's joining our meeting today. So please type that in, and we'll get started here shortly. All right, well, we are going to get started. I'm Melinda Gable with the Forest Landowner Foundation, and really appreciate everybody joining today. I think this is our finals webinar as far as with carbon market providers in this series. We've had some great presentations, really good discussion all around the forest carbon market, and look forward to our presentation today from Forest Carbon Works and Sarah Ford. And as she's given her presentation, please write in the chat or in the Q&A as a question might pop up or a comment, and we'll make sure we save plenty of time at the end of today's webinar to address that. So with that, Sarah, thank you so much for joining, and we will get underway.
Great, thanks, Melinda. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here, just a second. Okay, can everyone see that okay?
You're good.
Great. All right. Thanks again for having me here today. Again, my name is Sarah Ford. I am Chief Forestry Officer with Forest Carbon Works. And thanks to Michelle and Melinda for hosting this really great webinar series. It's been a really nice series of presenters over the duration of this last few weeks, and we're really happy to be here. Again, my name is Sarah, and I'm coming from Stowe, Vermont today. All right, so Forest Carbon Works, our mission is to make long-term conservation both possible and profitable for family forest owners. And we're doing this to secure legacies and also provide a diversified revenue stream that really helps to ensure stewardship both for current and future generations. So today, what I'm going to do is go over both our history as a company at Forest Carbon Works, why we focus on long-term forest conservation, and give an overview of both our program and process at Forest Carbon Works. So I think, as probably many of us know, we have more than 1/3 of our country in forests in the United States. And so many of these areas are more productive than others, particularly the Northwest, the Northeast, and the Southeast. And these areas are capturing and storing more than 900 million tons of carbon each year, offsetting more than 16% of our annual emissions in the US. And so this is presenting this really enormous potential for both climate mitigation and carbon storage here in the country. 39% of these forests are family owned, really just adding to this potential for carbon storage and sequestration. In that 39% of our forests are family owned. Also, the average age of the forest owner is 70 years old. So this really just increases the significance of needing to find ways to secure our forest legacies here in the US. Because of this age of the average landowner, our forests are at risk of generational transfers, parcelization, degradation. So really anything that we can do to help with land tenureship and really long-term conservation is really needed at this point, which I'm sure, again, is not really new news to many that are here today. So here at Forest Carbon Works, we got our start under the umbrella of our former parent company, EP Carbon. EP Carbon is a global carbon development company, having completed more than 45 carbon projects worldwide across nearly 13 million acres, and has more than 35 years of carbon project development under its belt. At FCW, we launched FCW Forest Carbon Works. We launched under that EP Carbon umbrella back in 2016, where we started conducting our first pilot inventories, focusing on small family forest owners. We completed and verified our first carbon project in 2018. That was actually completed under the compliance carbon market, although today my focus is going to be on the voluntary carbon market. This carbon project was only 117 acres in size, located in Oregon, and at that time was the smallest carbon project in the country. After succeeding in completing that carbon project, we went on to start additional carbon projects. In 2020, we branched off fully from EP Carbon into our own public benefit corporation and began growing and scaling. In 2022, this past March, we were acquired by Chestnut Carbon, which is where we now sit, our new parent company. And this has really allowed us to continue on this rapid growth trajectory, both in size and in programs. Currently, we have about 40 full-time members of our team. We're headquartered in Minneapolis, and we are spread across the West Coast, Pacific Northwest, Upper Lakes or Lake States, Northeast, Southeast, and Appalachia. And in addition to the focus on forest carbon and family forest owners for our projects, we're also in the process of developing and building a new afforestation or restoration program that's actually focused in the Southeast, which I'm going to give a couple slide overview of later on in this presentation. So I wanted to just give a quick overview of the voluntary carbon market, which I know you've probably already heard a lot about, in that it's different from the compliance market, where we originally did start with our carbon programs at Forest Carbon Works. The voluntary carbon market being voluntary, participation is optional, unlike the compliance market. There's no regulation, therefore it's not guaranteed or mandated that those that are participating in the voluntary market are actually reducing their emissions. And so with that lack of regulation in the voluntary carbon market comes a real spectrum in quality of carbon credit, and also a spectrum of methodology. There's quite a few methodologies that exist within the voluntary carbon market. And really, buyers are becoming more and more concerned with just actually what's behind the carbon credits that are being issued from forest carbon projects. I just read actually yesterday or the day before that, and this is not new news either, that it's projected that the voluntary carbon market will need to grow by more than 15 times by 2030 to meet the current demand for us to reach our commitments that we've been making or have made to achieve our 1.5 degree pathway, which really gets at just, I think, the importance of quality of project and credit in the voluntary market as more and more are really entering into this space. So at Forest Carbon Works, quality and integrity are really integral to what we do, being very long-term conservation focused. We only use approved methodologies for our projects. These have been peer reviewed and are approved by the carbon registries that we're using. So currently we are working under the VERA or registry or verified carbon standard, utilizing an approved methodology within this registry for our carbon program, carbon projects in the voluntary market. This means that our credits and our projects are real and measurable. They are inventoried and quantified in a way that can be repeated, and the carbon stocks are truly accounted for and making an impact. The accounting that we're doing for both additionality and leakage measurements within our methodology is conservative and also repeated over the duration of our projects, which is also really important, as additionality and leakage, as I know have been coming up over the duration of this webinar series, are really, really important and a very hot topic right now. With our long-term conservation focus come a multitude of co-benefits, which are also becoming increasingly important to credit buyers. Our projects naturally have these, including such things as soil and water protection, wildlife habitat, and the list goes on from there. Our projects at Forest Carbon Works are improved forest management projects, as are most forest carbon projects that have been talked about, I know, in the voluntary market to date. And so just for another quick overview and review, what that means is that by doing an improved forest management project, you're committing to altering your management within your project area or improving it, as opposed to what you were doing before. And so the carbon project is resulting in a change in management, increased and enhanced carbon storage and sequestration. So this image here is demonstrating in a sort of simplified way what that ideally would look like. The gray dotted line at the bottom here is demonstrating the baseline that is set for the project. This is determined using regional averages, so local data, typically from the Forest Inventory and Analysis data set that is repeatedly inventoried every 5 years, and also business as usual harvest scenarios that are also localized to each project area. The green dotted line at the top represents harvest and project management activities over the duration of the project. So you can see that green line is above the gray line, representing that improved forest management or change in management over the lifetime of the project. So the green in the middle shows that additionality, or the teal in the middle, which is also showing the credits that are yielded as a result of the project. So what are we doing exactly in our program at Forest Carbon Works? So to enroll in our program at FCW, you have to have a minimum of 40 acres. You have to own your timber rights. You can't have any overly restrictive easements that prohibit harvesting. This is to confirm that there's additionality created as a result of the project. We do require landowners to enroll all of their forest land. This is because if they did not enroll all of their forest land, potentially harvest activities could increase on the non-enrolled land, which is viewed as a form of leakage, activity shifting leakage. At this time, if you've participated in another carbon program, you cannot enroll in a second carbon program, including our carbon program. This is to avoid double counting. Both carbon developers and registries at this time have not agreed upon a way for dual enrollment in more than one program. So I've mentioned long-term conservation a number of times, and so our program is long-term. The duration of our program is 125 years in the voluntary market as well. I will break this down coming up over the next couple of slides. We require access to your property for our forest technicians and our team. This is to complete those inventories that I mentioned. We do allow harvest, but we do require that you coordinate any commercial harvest activities with us, you and your forester. We have multiple foresters on our team spread across the country to help facilitate this. The only regular requirement for our landowners, our members, is to complete an annual reporting form, which gives us an idea of your forest condition. It's an online form, it's very easy, and our team is available to help facilitate that as needed. So the 125 years, this is broken into a 25-year payment period and a 100-year legacy period. The 25-year payment period is further broken down into 5-year renewable contracts. This is to allow for adjustments to carbon pricing over the 5 years, and also it aligns with repeated inventories and third-party verifications that we complete over the duration of the project. Our payments start at $10 per acre per year. We provide forest management assistance, like I mentioned, over the duration of the entire project. So if and when you would like to harvest, we will oversee this and provide updates to your management plan as needed, say to help with compatibility with our program and a tax program, or just larger compatibility in general. In the 100-year legacy period, you do not receive annual payments anymore. However, you do have the option to renew the 25-year payment period prior to going into the legacy period. So you could just start that 25-year payment cycle again. That's again broken down into the 5-year contracts. The 100-year legacy period is really meant to just keep your forest sustainably managed over that time. You can still harvest. You actually have quite a bit of increased harvest flexibility. So you could enter into what is a more like regular management cycle at that time, since you're not issuing credits anymore for your property. We still oversee this entire portion of the project via a long-term monitoring trust that we have set up. So to sign up for our program at Forest Carbon Works, step 1 is to go online to our website. We have a very easy application process. You enter in your info as a landowner, and also your parcel information for your forest lands. Next, we'll evaluate that parcel information via a combination of spatial, remote, forest management plan, any and all data that we have for your property. From that, we'll determine what your payment per acre per year is over that first 5-year period. Again, our payments start at $10 per acre per year. We'll present you with a membership offer that has an annual payment amount in it. Next, you accept the membership offer. Then we make that first payment to you, which we call our down payment. Those are the first 3 very easy steps, which can be completed within 30 to 60 days, ideally. Step 4, we will send a forest technician, one of our contract cruisers, out to your property to complete additional inventory, which is also helping us prepare for our third-party audit or verification that we complete for all of our properties. Next, we'll complete the audit and sell the credits from your property. And then we'll make that second payment in year 2. So we've already made the year 1 payment, we complete the audit and sell credits, then make the year 2 payment. Then we continue to make annual payments to you. For the remainder of that 5-year credit cycle, you complete that annual report each year, and then you renew for another 5-year contract cycle. Upon renewal, we would complete another inventory to evaluate your carbon stocking. Your payments would be adjusted based on this inventory and adjustments or the current market price of carbon at that time. So you would theoretically be rewarded for management that you're doing that would affect your carbon stocking. And also, if carbon pricing has changed, you would also be paid for that, with a minimum of $10 per acre per year, regardless of what carbon pricing is at that point in time, 5 years down the road. So breaking down the carbon quantities, pricing, how we're getting to those numbers just a little bit more. Feel like repetition can be a little good, so it can be helpful. It's a lot of information. So again, on the initial upfront part of you or our landowners signing up, go online, fill out the application, put in their forest info. We evaluate your forest info. We determine your initial payment based on that spatial remote analysis, any and all data we have. We give you an offer with that minimum, with a payment amount that starts at $10 per acre per year, and then we reevaluate. As far as forest management over the duration of your membership, whether it be 5 years, 25 years. I've mentioned harvest a couple of times, and that harvesting is okay. So commercial harvests do require FSC certification under our methodology that we're using. At Forest Carbon Works, we have our own FSC forest management group that we have set up specifically to navigate and facilitate FSC certifications for our members. So if you need to get FSC certified for your harvest activities, we will oversee this and adjust your management plan to meet FSC standards, write a management plan for you if you don't have one, meeting FSC requirements at no cost to you as a member. We do allow for firewood removal each year between 3 and 8 cords annually. And as far as the audit, like I mentioned, those occur every 5 years. It's a blend of a desk and a field audit. Our third-party verifiers or auditors are going to be visiting subsets of our regional participants. So they aren't going to visit every single property, but they're going to be determining and double checking that all of the data that we provide to them from every single one of our participants aligns with all of our carbon quantification numbers, which is a really important part of that quality and integrity behind each project. So how are we doing this? How are we making these carbon projects or carbon program accessible to small landowners? There's many more carbon developers now that are doing this, whereas formerly, small landowners of less than 5,000 acres really just didn't have access. So at Forest Carbon Works, we have removed a lot of the complexities and the costs associated through a number of ways, a few of which being we have this standardized platform, reduced inventory development and verification costs, and we've simplified our inventory approach in that we still do complete on-the-ground inventory, which is very important, but we have our own proprietary technology that we use via a smartphone device and our in-house software, both to collect the information in the forest and analyze the information at our desk. That's really streamlined the entire process over completing traditional forest carbon inventories. Our customer team handles all of the heavy lifting as far as really simplifying the process from start to finish with landowners as they sign up, which makes it a lot more palatable and attainable. And it's historically has been a very overwhelming and complicated process. So right now we have our program available nationwide and in Southeast Alaska as well, actually. And we have a pretty robust pipeline. Some areas we have a lot more interest than others, as you can see, which really actually overlays pretty well on that first forest map that I showed you, based on areas that are more productive too. We have nearly 3,000 members in our pipeline that are in the process of applying for membership, and a portion of these that we're developing projects for at this point as well. We have nearly 1 million acres that we've assessed for payment, and over $3 million that we've allocated to landowners for payment. So we're getting new landowners into our pipeline every day, and this number is changing daily as well. And so in addition to providing these services at no cost to the landowner and being able to provide annual payments to our landowners for 25 years at a minimum, we also have a forester referral program. So we really want to work as much as we can with you and in the communities where we have these projects happening. So we have quite a few foresters we're working with already, and we highly believe that both our foresters and our landowners should be rewarded for this. So for each client or landowner that's brought to us, we pay 50 cents per acre up to 1,000 acres. And then over 1,000 acres in total, we'll then pay $1 per acre once you go over that 1,000 acre threshold. And having that harvest flexibility and the FSC certification that we offer is something that, as a forester myself, I think is a really good benefit, an important piece of our program. This is just really important as far as good forest management, and really just adding another layer to what we do at Forest Carbon Works. And with that, we have quite a few licensed foresters on our team. When we sell our credits, our offsets, we only are selling them to buyers that align with our mission, being so long-term conservation focused and developing our program to the highest benchmark of quality. We therefore are only seeking buyers who are also interested in that as well with our credits. So I mentioned that we now are owned by Chestnut Carbon, and we're also developing a chestnut afforestation or restoration program. And it's for these first few years, we're focusing on the Southeast, which is really exciting, and planting a lot of trees. And so I just wanted to quickly touch on this because it's actually been a really big focus of mine these last few months. And so our long-term goal with this program is to restore 500,000 acres of diverse, sustainable native forests across the US by 2030. And these also will be generating carbon credits. There'll be emissions removals credits as opposed to reductions credits, which are what are generated from our improved forest management carbon program. And the outcomes and just all of the benefits as a result of this program are huge. Everything from creating local jobs, adding to forest cover, biodiversity, water, soil protection. I mean, the list really, really goes on and on. And so for this first year of the program, and our pilot year, as we're calling it, we're focusing in the states of Arkansas and Alabama. And we're in the process of actually doing site preparation activities right now on 9 properties, and we'll be restoring 6,500 acres of degraded pasture lands in these areas, planting a lot of trees and a lot of species, both hardwood and softwood mixes, more than 15 species in total. It's an afforestation program. So afforestation means the land must have been non-forested for a minimum of 10 years prior to being planted for. And again, our target for this is degraded pasture lands. And the reason I wanted to mention this is because although we've been keeping this in-house for year 1, for the next years, we're going to continue focusing in the Southeast, and we are seeking landowners as we move into years 2 and 3 who would be interested in planting trees on their land. Currently, we're looking for any landowners who are located in the Southeast who own a minimum of 300 acres open land that has been non-forested for at least 10 years. We will plant the trees and do all of the tree planting activities, site preparation, etc. And we can pay $25 per acre per year. So if you are interested or know anyone who's interested, please let me know. And so I'm just about done. I just wanted to wrap up with an example of one of our landowners, our members, that's in Oregon. That's just a really great example of legacy securing, since talking about long-term conservation and this need to really look at carbon projects, our program for the future, and that with 125 years, your program is attached to not only you and your family and future generations, but also the land. And so this family, the Rowans, they we're not going to be able to keep their property in their family, and we're considering liquidating all of the timber, a lot of which is old growth on their land. And because now they have enrolled in our carbon program, are using carbon payments to help meet the management needs, including pay their property taxes, and have managed to secure their property for future generations. So it's a really nice success story there. So that's all that I have. Hopefully there are some questions. I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
All right, thanks, Sarah. Yeah, you got into a lot of good details there. And yeah, please put any questions you have or comments you have in the Q&A, or you can put it in the comment. And while that's getting going, I just made a few notes and had questions. So you state that the landowner goes online, fills out, gives information, and then you guys assess that and maybe take into consideration some other things. It sounds like the first payment can actually be made before you guys even go to on-site. Is that correct?
That is correct. We'll make the first payment as soon as the landowner signs up for membership with us.
And then so and that's when that payment is that $10, or sometimes that could be more based on what you're seeing about growth density acre sites, or that's just kind of your signing bonus?
Yeah, so the payment is going to be set for that first 5-year cycle. And so we determine what the payment will be per acre spread over the 5 years based on in that initial membership offer that we present to the landowner. And so depending on the next 5 years growth, change in carbon pricing, et cetera, there's certainly the possibility that payment will go up in price. And so again, the payment starts at $10 per acre per year. So it is possible that the landowner will be receiving more than the $10 per acre per year. And we, we're trying, we want landowners to be interested. We want them to sign up. And so we're giving them we're presenting them with this membership offer with the payments over the first 5 years, and we're giving them a down payment immediately before we go and sell credits from their property. And so then we'll sell credits and we'll continue making those payments based on what we promised them in that membership and committed to in the membership offer that we're giving.
So once you go and sell those credits, based on what you sell those credits, then is there like kind of a split of how you go back to the landowner with what their income will be, or it's the $10 and then after the 5 years, then it's adjusted?
That would be reflected. If there's any additional income above the $10, it's going to be reflected in the offer that we give to the landowner and for the first 5 years. And so
Okay.
That would be reflected. And then beyond that point, it would be reflected again in the next 5 years.
Great. And so somebody was asking to kind of go over that timeline again, you on the legacy period. So, because do you have the option to do 25 years and then move into the legacy period, or is it a 100-year commitment right from the get-go?
So the whole commitment is 125 years. And so that includes the 25-year of payment and then 100-year of legacy tacked on that really it completes the project. And so that's committing to good forest management over the long term. That's that long-term forest conservation piece that you really, the way that carbon markets were originally built and designed, 1 metric ton of carbon dioxide equivalent really was supposed to be captured and stored for 100 years. And so that's, kind of based on that original premise, although, obviously there are other ways to do it now, but it's also not only that, it's just that a lot of buyers are becoming increasingly, interested and wanting to know that, we're buying something that has that level of quality behind it, and that you're not going to just cut down your entire forest after 25 years, essentially, because that's a huge emission. And so obviously, for some, it's a better fit, and for others, it's not.
Right. Well, there's 10 million landowners out there. They all have different missions, objectives, and goals.
Yeah.
And that's part of what we're doing is everybody offers something, find the fit that's right for you, for your legacy. That's what it's all about. So a question we had was, if I was enrolled in a 1-year sequestration program that expired several months ago, can I participate in your program? So I think you addressed this, but just go over it again.
Yeah, I can touch on that because we are, we're trying, all the developers, we all know each other and we work with each other, and, we're working with NCX to try to achieve a way in which we can make sure we've accounted for whatever the carbon accounting is coming out of the other program. So we're not double counting it going into our program. And so Vera has been really clear as far as like our carbon registry for our program about not allowing movement between different registries. NCX isn't in a registry right now. And so it's honestly, right now the answer is still no, but we're working on it because we would like to create as much access as possible for landowners. So, my suggestion would be, don't not reach out to us, our customer team, because of that, because then, you'll at least be on our mailing list, in our pipeline to some degree. And so if and when we figure out a way to achieve that compatibility, then we'll at least have your information if you are interested at that point.
Yeah, Sarah and I were talking about this before. Sarah was at our conference, the Forest Landowners Association conference, as were several of the other carbon providers, and how even since June to now, when we're having our webinars, that they've been able to change, I don't know if changing their methodologies is right, but changing their program. So the goal here is everybody wants to make this work. There's going to be a high demand, and it's almost like the community of carbon providers went to make it work for those who needed to do net zero, and the companies and the corporations without really saying, oh, wait a second, how does this work for the landowner? And now we're in this time where everybody's trying to figure out how to make it work and make a solution. And so things are evolving. What was the program in June is a little different now. And it sounds like that's good to hear that you're still trying to evolve that, because in the end, we want forest sustainability. We want economic viability of our landowners. That's something that FLA has, up front. And there's many things we all want. So yeah, thanks for addressing that. Also, somebody wanted to know about your contact information. I can get Michelle to put that in the chat. But as always, we will have this up on the FLA website and under our Forest Carbon University. So that will be there. Somebody's also asking about the presentation in PDF format. We can certainly put that up. We are building our online resource library now, so we can definitely put that up. We had another comment question here. I'm going to read this through. It says, this program does now sound like a good fit for sustainable timber farmers. For example, in the North Carolina and most of the Southeast, we're planting a hybrid of loblolly and longleaf pine. We're doing a thinning at harvest in roughly the 12 and 17 and 22 year mark, and then a final cut at the 27, 30 year mark, and then replanting and starting again. It sounds like this program is not conducive or targeted to that type of forestry management, correct? So I guess if you're planting, this gentleman or forest landowner is planting a hybrid of loblolly and longleaf pine, but they're doing their thinnings. Now, I think it would matter, is this thinning being done for the management purposes of the forest, or is it being done for the harvesting, right? Is that kind of where you look at, is the harvesting versus the management side of it?
I guess it really would depend on a couple things. Yeah, you're right about that. And so something I didn't get into as far as it was level of harvest, because I know, I saw Matt just last week, he talked about the rule of thumb and harvest below growth, which is really standard, a lot of programs, and can really help dictate what's a sustainable amount of harvest. And so what we're doing at Forest Carbon Works is we have what we call, it's a harvest offset fee, which for commercial harvests, because they're technically viewed as an emission, it really allows for greater amounts of removals for landowners. That essentially, you're still getting paid for carbon, but if you're doing a commercial harvest that's going to negatively affect the amount of carbon that you should be getting credited, you would just have to pay an offset fee for that. So you're paying back your emission essentially. And ideally your revenues from your harvest, your stumpage, whatever revenues you're getting are going to be offsetting that. And so it's kind of a lot to cover in this talk, which is why I didn't bring it up. But so for this question, this could actually be like a great application for that. And so, I would be happy to chat about it more offline. Very happy, because we're honestly looking for examples right now to run through it as we're building it out as well, too, to just kind of see, how the pricing works, what the best uses are as far as just intensities, size, prescriptions, everything like that. So
yeah, great. So I would encourage that landowner to get in touch with Sarah. And that's another, example, what's happening, how can we do it? And you made the comment a couple of times about, well, when you cut that tree, that's an emission. I know that there's also a lot of work within the Forest Service. I know Georgia has passed a bill where they're trying to come up with the science and the calculations for, okay, well, we know when you cut that tree, you still have stored carbon. And if that tree is going into a mass timber or to a building, is there a way to carry that, the carbon that was sequestered, and then the carbon that's still in the tree, and then the carbon that's in that building? And we're not there yet, but Sarah, do you see a time, especially with yours, 125 years, where we'll be able to track the carbon that was sequestered and then the carbon that is still stored? And so maybe the penalty, I'll call it a penalty, or maybe the reward of continuing that carbon journey will go back to the landowner, or be a different type of penalty.
Absolutely. And yeah, I honestly, penalty is, it's a fortunate term, right? Because, we need to be managing for forest products, whether it be timber, carbon, they're all products, and the landowners need to be rewarded for them and not penalized. So yeah, and some methodologies, they do account for HWP for harvested wood products and long-term carbon and wood storage, but there's a lot of work to be done yet as far as actually really accounting for that. And I definitely see that hopefully being better accounted for in the near term, because there's a lot of work happening. There's a lot of demand for that right now, right? Especially as there's more and more carbon projects coming online, and we're looking at the leakage conversation is just massive. Therefore, too, as we're looking at these alterations to management, across multiple scales, too.
Yep. So, back to an earlier question: do state tax conservation programs like Georgia's CUVA, I'm not familiar with CUVA, count as disqualifying carbon program?
So I'm assuming that's a forest tax program. Because I worked heavily in the Vermont use value program, and we have all of our states in the New England have state tax programs. And so no, the answer is no, as long as you can meet the requirements for both your state tax program and our carbon program. And so the only conflicts that I've encountered are when if you're barred from harvesting as a result of, say, your forest carbon program, and the state you need to harvest for your state tax program. So hence this whole harvest offset fee policy that we're trying to simplify, essentially, to allow for more compatibility with state tax programs as well. So a lot of it right now is evaluated on a case-by-case basis, but the easy answer is, as long as you can meet the requirements for both your state tax program and your carbon program, then no. Then yes. Yeah. There's no problem.
And I think that's probably a lot. It's going to come down to an accounting question in the different state tax program. It's basically just make sure you're not double dipping or double benefiting, but so it's you can have dual benefits from these programs because they serve different purposes and needs. So then we had a question about, when you do analyze the larger tracts of land, what are your methodologies? Do you use drones to do that?
Yeah, that's a good question. And that's a really interesting, really cool new technology. We're not at this time using drones, but we are in conversations with a lot of different groups about all of those new technologies right now, because there's just so much happening in that world. We're using our own technology, our handheld devices blended with remote as well.
Yeah. I think this is a good question as well. And I think that might come down to, depends on the landowner's timing, but we have a landowner who is getting ready to do a harvesting. They're commercial timber owners, and they have a forest management plan, make sure that they're working for wildlife and clean water and all that. But they're going to be doing a thinning in the next few years, and then doing a replanting. So would they be eligible for your program, or after that replanting?
Yeah, my advice for landowners that have a near-term harvest scheduled is, and it sounds like this landowner is already thinking of approaching it like this, is do the harvest first. It depends on the scale and the intensity. The requirement is 40% canopy cover across 40 acres, I believe, is the minimum requirement for pretty much all of the IFM, approved forest management carbon methodologies. So it will depend on the post-harvest condition of their land. So if they can achieve that via their post-harvest residual stand, then sure. And my advice would be to do the harvest first and then approach us, because it's just so much easier as far as, not having to account for that emission. If with FSC certification, we of course would do that down the road, but then it just, it makes it simplifies everything.
Right. So if they retain a 40% canopy cover, they would still be able to qualify after the harvesting. So that would be an economic benefit to them. So, you mentioned, and I think there's a couple of the other providers that if you're going to do harvesting, you have to be certified, or in your case, even to the higher standard FSC. When we know in the U.S. that we have the BMPs, we have a strong rule of law in this country. So, why is it that you're requiring the FSC certification?
Yeah, so the methodology that we're using for our verified carbon standard for Vera, it's called the VM03. It's actually VM00003. Yeah, methodology, and it's an existing methodology that the requirement is within that methodology. And so we currently, it's not required for non-commercial harvests, only commercial harvests. And it's just to add that extra layer of management to confirm that it's the oversight piece of what's behind the methodology, and therefore the credit that's coming out of it. We have what's called a SLIMF group set up right now at Forest Carbon Works. So it's small, low intensity forest management. And so we are not harvest oriented currently because the main focus is carbon management in our group. Not that we can't provide chain of custody certification if needed, but that's, I think, just an important consideration. As far as also when you enter into a carbon program, I also tell people, if timber is your main objective, a carbon program might not be for you because of what I was talking about with improved forest management. It is typically you need to make an alteration in your management for the program. That's what additionality is. Not that you still can't harvest timber, but it's these are important options to weigh as a landowner as well. And, that's with the FSC certification requirement as well. So because we're SLIMF, it's not as heavy of a requirement as the standard FSC requirement. Say if we were going for full chain of custody for all of our members, but I know, we've received a lot of mixed feedback about it. People have very mixed feelings about all certifications. I'm very well aware.
Yeah.
So
yeah, well, and it sounds like you've got different methodologies or different types of things that landowners would have to do to become FSC certified compared to other FSCs. So they're looking for that flexibility too there. But generally, it seems like landowners are managing their lands to the high standards and fit within there. So. And I think another thing that it seems like I'm hearing more about, or maybe I'm just gaining more knowledge, is if you're not harvesting more than you're growing, then it fits within the carbon plan. So I think there is becoming that balance of, there are landowners who are only going to harvest every so often, and so maybe they'll be able to attain that balance of the carbon plan and the harvest plan as well. What about if there's a natural disaster that occurs and out of control of the landowner?
Yeah, so similar to many of the other programs, we have a buffer pool.
Okay.
So a certain percentage of credits go into that buffer pool to protect the landowner. If there's a certain amount of loss beyond a certain point, so that 40% rule comes into play. If you've just, lost enough canopy cover on your property to deem the project irrecoverable, it will be terminated.
Great. And then I had one other question. It looks like we're don't have any. If anyone has any last minute questions, put them in. Oh, this I guess goes a little bit along with the natural disasters, but what are the penalties? And this is probably standard like other ones. If you do leave the contract, as I understand, if you sell your land, that's not a penalty. The other person then just inherits this contract and has to abide by it. But what if you do have to run into some situation where you harvest more than you grow or something like that?
Yeah, so it does the contract stays with the land. So you can sell land, and we would facilitate that for the landowner. If you want out of the program, you can buy back the credits that you've been issued at a 1.1% prorate. So say at year 4 or 5, and so at the $10 per acre, starting at that floor. So, or whatever's greater. So, and that's to, say the carbon market dropped, the carbon pricing dropped below that, is because we have our floor set at $10 per acre. Yeah. If there's a reversal, if it's it depends. If it's an intentional reversal, there also is additional penalty attached to that. That would be very unlikely that would happen unless it was actually related to a harvest, a planned harvest. It would of the landowner that would be compensated by the removals, by the stumpage and from that harvest. And so that gets a little more complicated. The only reversal that would be unplanned would be an unintentional reversal as a result of a natural disaster like you just asked about. So essentially, the easiest way, easiest answer to get out is you buy back at 1.1% prorate the credits you've been issued.
Yeah, good. Okay. And then it sounded like you said, as far as the, I think, auditing process, if you will, that you're going to, and I think we've seen this in other programs, more of a statistical analysis. So it's not going to be every 5 years, every landowner in your program is going to be inventoried. You're going to do a statistical analysis and you'll have other things. And I think probably technology is allowing for that. And that makes it more cost beneficial for everybody around.
You're exactly right about that. There'll be regional selections to do the on-the-ground inventory, the statistical analyses, new technology. I think we're coming a long way there. Here's how we're approaching the third-party verifications, which are a really important piece of the quality in these carbon programs. I mean, that third-party audit verification is a pretty critical component in our opinion.
Yeah. And if your land is in a conservation easement, does that preclude you from being in your program?
Not necessarily. It depends on the parameters of that easement. So if there's a severe harvest restriction on there, or really limiting harvest restriction, then yes, because the carbon program isn't really adding any other protection. But there are many conservation easements out there that don't really have any detail in them that I've read. It's specific only toward development, but nothing really beyond that. And so we will look through conservation easements to see if we can still layer the carbon project on top of that, making sure that we're getting additionality out of it, as additionality is really important.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's mainly about the development. So here's a great question. I know we've had this discussion internally as well. You guys probably have too. I think many people have. But so if you're not cutting your mature timber to permanently sequester that carbon in a long-term use forest product, and then replanting it with faster growing seedlings, which act more, they're going to sequester more carbon than the old ones, aren't you effectively slowing down the potential for long-term carbon sequestration? And I think we even had some people run some, just back in the notebook analysis to show, okay, in 100 years, if you do a 4-year rotation every 25 years, you would absorb more carbon than the 100-year stand. So I don't know, have you guys chatted about that? What's your response?
Yeah. These are always such great questions. That really gets at, especially in just different management regimes in different parts of the country, because especially when you're operating on shorter rotations, it's it's just a lot more difficult, I think, to think about, well, of course, growing trees for longer periods of time. And so the larger trees are operating or acting as carbon sinks. And so that's, even though they're not capturing and sequestering carbon at the rate as our younger trees, they are holding a lot of carbon. And that's really important, even if you allow them to grow beyond merchantable size. just having them there, you know, in our forests, you know, to act as these carbon, just biomass legacies, in addition to all the other benefits they provide for wildlife habitat, you know, climate mitigation, et cetera. And so obviously we don't want just only trees that are of one age and size class.
Right.
Really, it's having a mix, a balance of multiple ages, that structural heterogeneous forest structure that's allowing, you know, space for thinking about our future forest, our future cohort to come in, to grow up, regeneration. And so it might result in a forest that looks like a lot different than you're used to, but I think it's definitely possible to manage for that. It just means potentially changing, you're changing your management objective away from timber as the primary objective. You could harvest some timber, but less timber. And this is a conversation that we've been having internally a lot too, as far as like in the Southeast in particular, what's that management going to look like? I do think it's possible. It's just going to be different than a lot of traditional management, whether you're moving into more of like shelterwood style management, you know. I'll stop because I could go on. The forestry nerd. Sorry.
But, you know, I think it's good that we are having these conversations you're having, and we're going to get there. We're going to get that balance. I think getting back to harvesting the forest and planting new ones, the life cycle assessment would have to then go in that. So, okay, yes, you know, when you cut the tree down, what's the emissions? I mean, you know, science and all that, but it's all being discussed and thought about. And I think in a positive way, in a collaborative way, which is great to see. So, well, this has been great. Sarah, thank you. I think we had some great discussion and great questions. I think people really appreciate the insight on your program. We will have contacts all up there. I know Sarah and her team are available to talk to anyone and noodle through different scenarios. So thank you for joining us, and we will definitely be back in touch probably with a wrap up overall webinar sometime before the end of the year. So thank you, everyone. Have a great day. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Michelle.
Great. Thank you.